We live in interesting times.
For the headlines.
The chairman of the Senate Homeland Security kicked off a hearing on human trafficking and smuggling on the U.S. southern border by saying he hoped a photo that showed a Salvadoran migrant father and his 23-month-old daughter drowned in the Rio Grande River would spur Congress to action.
10 U.S. Democrats railed against a national economy and Republican administration they said exists only for the rich, as presidential candidates debated on stage for the first time in the young 2020 season.
U.S. President Donald Trump heads to the Group of 20 summit in Japan this week, weighed down by escalating tensions with Iran, stalled negotiations over reducing North Korea's nuclear capabilities, and a stalemated trade dispute with China that could have global ramifications.
I hope it's going to be for the good.
And President Trump lashed out at what he called unacceptable tariffs imposed by India as the U.S. president headed towards a high-stakes G20 summit likely to be dominated by trade tensions.
I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. The chairman of the Senate Homeland Security kicked off a hearing on human trafficking and smuggling on the U.S. southern border by saying he hoped a photo that showed a Salvadoran migrant father and his 23-month-old daughter drowned in the Rio Grande River would spur Congress to action.
I realize tragedies occur all over this country, all over the world. I don't want to see another picture like that on the U.S. border. I hope that picture alone will catalyze this Congress, this Senate, this committee to do something.
The Homeland Security Committee heard from top officials at U.S. Customs and Border Protection about the strain that's being caused by the surge in thousands of migrant families and unaccompanied children. The Border Patrol has reported apprehending nearly 133,000 people last month, including many Central American families, as monthly totals have begun topping 100,000 for the first time since 2007.
I'm sorry to report that Border Patrol's contribution to this whole of government effort is currently strained, as we're forced to devote 40 to 60% of our manpower to the humanitarian flow that serves as a lucrative line of business for smuggling organizations. We're overwhelmed by the sheer volume of apprehensions and cannot conduct in-depth interviews that provide vital intelligence on smuggling and trafficking networks.
The variables driving this crisis are the same. Unprecedented numbers of family units and unaccompanied children from Central America, many in large groups, and nearly all of them seeking asylum and arriving without proper documentation.
Lawmakers' sense of urgency to provide humanitarian aid was amplified by recent reports of gruesome conditions in a windowless Border Patrol station in Clint, Texas, where more than 300 infants and children were being housed. Many were kept there for weeks and were caring for each other in conditions that included inadequate food, water, and sanitation.
President Donald Trump is voicing optimism on legislation in Congress that would provide billions in humanitarian aid for the immigration crisis at the U.S. southern border. At the same time, he blamed Democrats for migrant deaths at the border, saying they need to change the asylum laws.
I just spoke with Nancy Pelosi, and we had a good conversation having to do with the bill, humanitarian aid at the border for the children, mostly. And we are moving along very well with a bipartisan bill in the Senate. Spoke with Mitch, spoke to a lot of people. We're doing very well. It's very far along, and I believe the House is going to also be getting together with the Senate. Hopefully they can get something done. It's humanitarian aid. It's very important. And I think that a lot of people are starting to realize that I was right when I said we have a crisis at the border. Everyone's saying now we had a crisis at the border. It wasn't a manufactured crisis, which they were saying. It wasn't manufactured at all. We have a crisis at the border. We have to change the laws. And then that father, who probably was this wonderful guy with his daughter, things like that wouldn't happen, because that journey across that river is a very dangerous journey. They will not change the asylum policy, but now for the first time, they're starting to talk about it.
Ten U.S. Democrats railed against a national economy and Republican administration they said exists only for the rich, as presidential candidates debated on stage for the first time in the young 2020 season, embracing class warfare as a defining theme in their fight to deny U.S. President Trump a second term in office. Healthcare and immigration, more than any other issues, led the debate. Immigration was also on their minds as the candidates pointed to the searing photos of a drowned Salvadoran father and his toddler daughter at the Rio Grande and blamed Trump and his policies on migrants crossing into America illegally.
And his 23-month-old daughter, Valeria.
Watching that image of Oscar and his daughter, Valeria, is heartbreaking. It should also piss us all off. We need a Marshall Plan for Honduras and Guatemala and El Salvador so that people can find safety and opportunity at home instead of coming to the United States to seek it.
We would not turn back Valeria and her father, Oscar. We would accept them into this country and follow our own asylum laws. We would not build walls. We would not put kids in cages. In fact, we would spare no expense to reunite the families that have been separated already. And we would not criminally prosecute any family who is fleeing violence and persecution. We would make sure...
Secretary, let him finish, and I will give you his policy. But let him finish. Let him finish, please.
I think that you should do your homework on this issue.
If
you did your homework on this issue, you would know that we should repeal this section.
This is an issue that we should and could be talking about for a long time, and we will.
A show of hands, who as president would sign on to the 2015 nuclear deal as it was originally negotiated? Well, Senator Booker, why not?
May I address that? We need to renegotiate and get back into a deal, but I'm not going to have a primary platform to say unilaterally I'm going to rejoin that deal, because when I'm President of the United States, I'm going to do the best I can to secure this country and that region and make sure that if I have an opportunity to leverage a better deal, I'm going to do it.
All right, Senator Klobuchar, I'd like you to answer that question.
And this president is literally every single day.
And while many Democratic voters are obsessed with defeating Trump, the Republican president was an afterthought for most of Wednesday night. In one of the night's final moments, Washington Governor Jay Inslee described Trump as the biggest threat to the security of the United States. Take a listen.
If I can, to Congressman Gabbard.
Who is the geopolitical threat to the United States? Just give me a one-word answer, Congressman Delaney.
Well, the biggest geopolitical challenge is China, but the biggest geopolitical threat remains nuclear weapons. Right? So those are, those are different questions.
The biggest threat to the security of the United States is Donald Trump, and there's no question.
Congresswoman Gabbard.
Now, Wednesday's lineup featured 3 women, 1 black man, and another man of Mexican heritage. 3 candidates spoke Spanish at times, while Booker, an African-American, talked about the violence that left 7 people in his own urban neighborhood shot last week alone. Now, Elizabeth Warren spent the evening at center stage, a top-tier candidate whose campaign has gained ground in recent weeks, as she has released a near-constant stream of policy proposals. Take a listen.
China and climate change.
Congressman. I am in this fight because I believe that we can make our government, we can make our economy, we can make our country work, not just for those at the top. We can make it work for everyone, and I promise you this, I will fight for you as hard as I fight for my own family.
Iran's president says the new U.S. sanctions targeting the Islamic Republic's supreme leader and others are outrageous and idiotic. The comments by Hassan Rouhani come a day after the Trump administration sanctioned Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and his associates.
یه آدم اینقدر عقلش از دست بده و بیاد یک کار وقیحانه و احمقانه ای انجام بده که چی؟ رهبری یک کشور رو بگه من میخوام تحریم بکنم. همه تو این 40 سال دچار ناتوانی ذهنی شدن اینا. کاخ سفید دچار معلولیت ذهنی شده. نمیدونه باید چی کار بکنه. مسدود بکنید.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump said an Iranian attack on any American interest will be met with great and overwhelming force. And in some areas, overwhelming will mean obliteration. Take a look. Now, Trump issued a threat in a tweet on Tuesday. It came after Iranian President Hassan Rouhani said that the White House is afflicted by mental retardation. Now, Trump called that a very ignorant and insulting statement. The latest verbal volleys between Tehran and Washington followed the U.S. decision on Monday to levy financial sanctions Iran's supreme leader and his associates. President Rouhani said in a televised address that the decision meant the certain failure of the White House pressure campaign against Iran. President Trump says Iranian leaders spend their money on supporting militant groups and don't care about the Iranian people who are suffering under economic sanctions. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Health is our most important asset, and it should always be a constant effort to seek ways to take care of it. That includes professional medical help from the best available. The Manila-Beijing Medical Associated Incorporated is known as one of the most specialized centers in medical services, backed by several
Thousands of people joined Hong Kong's latest rally Wednesday night against legislation they fear would erode the city's freedoms, capping a day-long appeal to world leaders ahead of a G20 summit that brings together the heads of China, the United States, and other major nations later this week. Below neon-lit skyscrapers, the peaceful crowd of all ages listened to speeches in a public square and then in unison held up their smartphones with their lights on. The police presence was light, a few officers watching from a distance. After the rally's end, the younger protesters, some of whom have been more militant, headed to the nearby police headquarters where they stood outside shouting demands for an independent inquiry into a heavy-handed police crackdown at a protest earlier this month.
At the end of the day, it's a matter of politics, and it's the chief executive's responsibility and duty to calm people down. An empty apology, of course, is not enough, and we find out by now. They have their demands, and they are all reasonable demands, and I have absolutely no idea why this government is not paying attention or answering to this request or demands.
The protests were sparked by proposed legislative changes that would allow suspects to be extradited from Hong Kong to mainland China for trial. Many fear the proposals would erode Hong Kong's judicial independence and the civil liberties the semi-autonomous city was granted after its handover from British rule in 1997. The government suspended debate on the legislation indefinitely after earlier protests, but activists are demanding that it be withdrawn completely.
In other news, an Air India Boeing 777 flying from Mumbai to Newark, New Jersey, has landed safely at an airport near London after being diverted. Essex police said there had been a security alert. The flight, which landed at Stansted Airport Thursday at 10:15 a.m. BST or 09:15 GMT, was parked on an isolated stand far from the airport's main building. Stansted says operations at the airport are expected to return to normal. The UK's Ministry of Defense did not identify the plane involved, but did say the Typhoon military aircraft safely escorted a civilian aircraft to the airport, which lies around 37 miles northeast of the center of London.
Local officials in eastern Siberia say 2 pilots have been killed and 31 passengers injured in a plane accident. The governor of Buryatia region told Russian media on Thursday that the Antonov AN-24 plane caught fire after it landed at the airport of Nizhyangarsk and skidded off the runway. He said both pilots died in the accident and that at least 3 of the 31 injured people remain in hospital. 46 passengers have been rescued, the Russian Emergency Ministry said.
At least 16 people were crushed to death and dozens injured in Madagascar at a stadium hosting National Independence Day celebrations in the capital, Antananarivo. Take a look. The bodies of 16 victims, including 3 children, were stored at the mortuary of Ejra Hospital in the city, according to AFP journalists. According to witnesses at the hospital, the accident occurred in the afternoon outside the Maha Masina Stadium, where several thousand people had gathered for a concert following the traditional military parade held to mark the National Day. At the end of a military parade, security forces opened the gates to allow spectators to leave the enclosure, causing the crowd to mass outside the stadium, according to witnesses. The police then immediately closed the gates and blocked the crowd, causing a deadly pileup.
A suicide bomber targeting a police patrol struck a busy commercial street in central Tunis on Thursday injuring at least 5 people, including 2 officers. Tunisia's Interior Ministry says the attacker detonated explosives near the French embassy shortly before 11 a.m. Shortly afterwards, a second suicide bomber blew himself up near a police station in Al-Karjani district. In the first attack, a police officer was killed and 3 civilians were wounded. Body parts were seen lying beside a pockmarked vehicle on the corner of Charles de Gaulle Street in central Tunis. Tunisia has been struck repeatedly by terror attacks. British tourists have only recently started returning to Tunisia after the Sousse Beach massacre and Bardo Museum shooting in 2015. Tunisia has been battling militant groups operating in remote areas near the border with Algeria since an uprising overthrew autocratic leader Zain Abidine Ben Ali in 2011. We'll be giving you updates as we follow this developing story.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel appeared unsteady and shaking for the second time in 10 days at a ceremony in Berlin on Thursday. Take a look. The brief incident happened as Merkel stood alongside President Frank-Walter Steinmeier at an early morning indoor event where Germany's new justice minister was being formally appointed. Now, German Chancellor Angela Merkel was handed a glass of water but rejected it and appeared fine when she arrived in Parliament half an hour later. She was due to set off for Japan later Thursday for the annual summit of the Group of 20 Global Powers. Her spokesman, Stephen Seibert, told news agency DPA that everything is going ahead as planned. The Chancellor is fine. On Tuesday last week, Merkel's whole body shook as she stood outside in hot weather alongside Ukraine's president. She said afterwards that she was fine after drinking 3 glasses of water, which she apparently needed. Hot weather in Germany has continued this week, though outdoor temperatures in Berlin dropped significantly overnight after peaking on Wednesday. The 64-year-old Merkel has been German leader since 2005.
More news will be coming your way when Eagle News International returns.
Health is our most important.
President Donald Trump Thursday lashed out at what he called unacceptable tariffs imposed by India as the U.S. president headed towards a high-stakes G20 summit likely to be dominated by trade tensions. I look forward to speaking with Prime Minister Narendra Modi about the fact that India, for years having put very high tariffs against the United States, just recently increased the tariffs even further. This is unacceptable and the tariffs must be withdrawn, tweeted the president. Furious at what he sees as an unfair advantage in the trading system, Trump has already hit Beijing with $200 billion in levies on Chinese imports and appeared to threaten more.
Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping touched down in Osaka several hours before President Trump in driving rain as a potential typhoon edges towards Japan. The two leaders are expected to meet Saturday. Barely pulling its punches, Chinese state-run news agency Xinhua said a certain country in the G20 resorts to such tactics as raising tariffs and threatening trade wars to make its trading partners knuckle under to unreasonable demands. Such unilateral bullying could have potentially devastating consequences for global prosperity, Xinhua said in an editorial. Most experts say a formal deal is unlikely at the summit due to a lack of time to prepare the complex issues involved and believe a ceasefire and commitment to keep talking is the most likely outcome.
I think if Xi Jinping and President Trump has some negotiations between the two, that will have a very positive impact to the world economy. Because currently the world economy was watching just fighting between the two countries. So I think their meeting here will mitigate those fears, and then the market can be regained again about a stable manner.
U.S. President Donald Trump arrived in Japan to meet with world leaders amid a flurry of international crises and tense trade negotiations. Air Force One touched down at Osaka International Airport in a rainstorm ahead of high-stakes meetings with Russia's Vladimir Putin, China's Xi Jinping, and a host of others at the gathering of the leaders of the world's largest economies. The visit comes days after Trump pulled back from the brink of armed conflict with Iran. Just days before heading to Osaka, Trump ratcheted up the pressure on Tehran by signing an executive order targeting Iran's supreme leader and his associates with financial sanctions.
In a few moments, I'll be signing an executive order imposing hard-hitting sanctions on the supreme leader of Iran and the office of the Supreme Leader of Iran and many others.
It would have been much more desirable for us to incrementally increase the pressure on Iran in a way that does not, cause the Iranians to feel that they're cornered and have nothing to lose by lashing out militarily. For their point of view, they need to move forward quickly, and you need to turn up the heat quickly. And I think that's what they did. But as we're seeing now, there's downsides to doing that. And the president is untested, has no experience in dealing with military matters of this sort, and therefore, somewhat uncomfortable in, the place that we're at.
Indications that the U.S. was prepared to resume talks with North Korea continued to be fueled by the president's comments about exchanging letters with leader Kim Jong-un. The second Trump-Kim summit held last February in Hanoi ended in failure and formal talks between the two nations broke down. Trump said in June he had received a beautiful letter from Kim, not revealing its contents, and then on Monday told reporters that he received a birthday letter from the North Korean.
This way, guys. Just a friendly letter back and forth.
Thanks.
A friendly.
This way. Thank you for
He actually sent me birthday wishes, but it was just a very friendly letter both ways.
All right, thanks everybody.
We have a very good relationship.
North Korea is not a solved problem. President Trump implies it's on the way to solution. It is not. Very little has been accomplished in the years since Singapore, and I think you could argue that things were set back a ways when they met in Hanoi. So I think think it's important that the Chinese perhaps give a message to the North Koreans, a message to say that, look, we will try to help North Koreans, but you need to get serious about some of the denuclearization.
This week's G20 meeting in Osaka is the first opportunity Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping have had to thrash out the trade dispute face-to-face since Trump said he was preparing to target the $300 billion in Chinese imports that he hasn't already hit with tariffs, extending them to everything China ships to the United States. Trump has already imposed 25% tariffs on $250 billion in Chinese imports, and China has retaliated with tariffs on U.S. goods. The two sides are in a stalemate after 11 rounds of talks that have failed to overcome U.S. concerns over China's acquisition of American technology and its massive trade surplus. China denies forcing U.S. companies to hand over trade secrets and says the surplus is much smaller than it appears once the trade in services and the value extracted by U.S. companies are taken into account. American businesses and investors are looking ahead to a highly anticipated meeting between the U.S. and China's leaders later this week.
You know, you may have read a couple of things about China. I spoke to President Xi, terrific president, a great leader of China. Spoke to him this morning at length, and we'll see what happens. But we're either going to have a good deal and a fair deal, or we're not going to have a deal at all, and that's okay too.
Well, I think we'd like to see a little bit of progress with respect to the trade dispute with China, right? So, you know, a meeting between President Xi and President Trump that kind of reopened these dialogues where we saw progress, or even amongst their ministers where we saw a reopening of the dialogue, would count as progress as we kind of move forward on this front. We'd also like to see the President and the other G20 leaders talk about how we can expand global trade outside of China, right? So, you know, the President was just in Japan. We're talking about a trade agreement with Japan that would be very good for the U.S. economy, in particular the agricultural sector. We need resolution with respect to Europe when it comes to the threat of car tariffs. We also need to remove regulatory barriers that become a hindrance to U.S. exporters into Europe.
An expert on 5G technology said U.S. restrictions on Huawei are causing a major reset in the telecommunications ecosystem, but that domestic demand in China could help the firm recover. Take a look.
So this is basically causing a major reset in the entire food chain, telecommunications food chain and ecosystem. So Huawei is obviously taking a hit. There is no, it's not a mystery. It's not only affecting Huawei, as a matter of fact, this is reshaping the entire telecommunications ecosystem because we are all intertwined, we are all linked together. All companies in the world are related together. This is what we call the ecosystem. Huawei has been preparing for that for some time, and now at this point, you know, they are taking further actions to respond to the demand that China is creating. So again, you know, we are seeing the acceleration in China that is potentially going to help Huawei overcome the troubles they have in the world.
The Trump administration has been pressing other countries to ban Huawei equipment from their networks, particularly in the coming rollout of super-fast 5G networks, a global project in which Huawei had been expected to play a leading role. Huawei also said it has signed 50 commercial contracts for 5G with a majority of European clients, and that it will continue to maintain or even increase investment in the next generation wireless network. Huawei's booth at the Mobile World Congress Congress, decorated with signs saying 5G is on, showcased its 5G technology used in mines in central China and electronic companies in South Korea. U.S. semiconductor firm Micron Technology also said Tuesday it had resumed some sales to Huawei despite the ban imposed by President Donald Trump on national security grounds. Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned.
Health is our most important.
Still in connection with the commemoration of the 121st Philippine Independence Day, a festival of authentic Filipino cuisine reaches the U.S. Capitol. Here's Aaron Abunal. Watch this.
Filipinos and non-Filipinos alike are in for a treat today. Here at the District Wharf in Washington, D.C., where the D.C. Filipino Food Festival is happening. So everyone can taste the Philippines. Yes, so this is our first annual DC Filipino Food Festival. It is held, as you can see, at the beautiful District Pier at the Wharf in Southwest Washington, D.C. And we're so honored to work with these amazing chefs. The community, we've had over 200 supporters come out, thousands of people come out on this day to celebrate Filipino culture and food.
Well, being over the Philippines a few times, I've tried the culture and the food itself. Here it's a little different. They're trying to blend things together to make everything taste, you know, for everybody to enjoy. But the thing about Filipino food is very sweet usually, which everybody loves sweet food. So it's a very nice thing to have here.
We got to taste some things I've never tasted before. I've tasted some things I've tasted other versions of before, but was blown away. The food was excellent. It just the music was entertaining, and we got to see some beautiful regalia. I don't want to say costume, that implies fake like Halloween. Regalia and some entertainment on the stage.
I mean, there's so many Filipinos here in the U.S. and not as many restaurants to represent Filipinos. And so when we have events like this, it's an opportunity for, like I said, people to come out and try new food and then go look out, you know, for Filipino restaurants and go try the awesome ones that are here in D.C. like Kaliwa and Bad Saint and a bunch of others, yeah.
what this entire festival means to us is, really exposing to people what Filipino food is and how delicious and how, what kind of experience it can be. One thing that we really love is, delicious food, really nice, comfortable ambiance. So we have a kids area in our restaurant. We love families to come in, and that's what Filipino culture is all about, is spending time with family, making sure everybody feels included, and that, you have a really great time over some really delicious foods.
Since this date is quite in close proximity with the National Coconut Day of the United States, we decided to feature Philippine coconut products that are available here in the U.S. for the visitors to try. And it's a way of promoting Philippine coconuts at the same time supporting the first ever Taste the Philippines Festival.
And it's just so great. There are lots of volunteers, there are lots of participants. It's so nice to see our Philippine flags here in the DC Wharf and have this Filipino festival. Filipino cuisine is not as popular as other Asian cuisines, but now we're feeling that we're getting there to be at the top of being popular here in the United States.
The Filipino-American community here, they came out in droves. It's so nice to see so many of them here, and I think it has made all of us realize that we can do it. We can stage an event like this at the U.S. Capitol and be successful and have our American friends join us and support it. The great thing about this is that this is organized by Kaliwa Restaurant and also Mindset Communities and the Philippine American Foundation for Charities. And these are 3 establishments that we have been working closely with. And so to see them really, meaning this is a private initiative, and so to see them really galvanize the community and encourage all of these establishments to be part of it, it's just wonderful. And we hope that it becomes a yearly event.
Parang nasa Ortigas lang tayo. From the street foods, delectable dishes, music, and performances, this is surely a fun treat, lalo na kung homesick ka na. From the DC Filipino Food Festival here at the District Wharf, I'm Arana Banal, always one with 25.
And finally in our news, a burger bubble tea social event hosted by Iglesia Ni Cristo members in Heathrow, United Kingdom. Take a look.
And welcome to Burgers and Bubble Tea Social, a free event hosted by INC members in Heathrow and Heathrow North here in the United Kingdom. This fun activity allows people to find out more about the INC and sample different types of burgers and drink some refreshing bubble tea. The event even had a friendly competition on the best burger and bubble tea. This allowed INC members to invent their own unique homemade burger as well as their delicious side dishes. Hi, so can you tell me what is the burger that you invented?
So here at RE2 we made a topper burger. So a topper burger is a marinated beef in soy sauce, calamansi juice and sugar.
Oh, sounds really unique. And tell me, what is the side dish?
We have a side of sweet potato fries.
Okay, it sounds like a perfect compliment. And tell me about your bubble tea.
So we're serving 2 today. We have an ube flavor and a mango fruit tea. So here's one if you'd like to try it. Yeah.
Okay. Very sweet, delicious, and refreshing. It's gonna be a tough competition. On the menu, you can find here our rice burger, seafood burger, as well as the Filipino tapa burger made with marinated beef were among the popular choices. So tell me, what was your favorite burger and bubble tea?
My favorite burger was the one with the rice, which was corner, I think it was area 1. I think it was a very different idea to make the bun, instead of the bun, use the rice and the sauce on it and the egg. It reminded me of some exotic holidays I have in my past.
Sounds good. Okay, and what was your favorite bubble tea?
That would be area 3. I like the taste of it. They had fruits in there and I had 3 already and I could have another one.
Yeah, it was fun, enjoyable, fun for the kids. Yeah, very friendly. Everyone was very friendly, attentive. So yeah, we feel very welcome.
In the bubble tea menu, milk tea flavored ube or purple yam, pandan, and mango fruit slushes, along with chewy pearls, popping boba, and tapioca bowls. They are pretty much a quirky snack and drink in one. Hello there.
Oh, hello. How are you? Okay?
Good, thanks. Yeah, can you tell me about the burger that you invented?
We have this all homemade burgers and patties as well. So they all made from scratch. So we made it ourselves.
So what is unique about the burger?
The good thing about the burger is our burgers mixed with vegetable as well. So it's not just pure Angus beef burger. So it's a combination of meat and vegetable as well.
The uniqueness of this activity is we involved the brethren in the congregation to cook their home-cooked burgers and bubble tea to be able to show off their skills and to use it to encourage our friends and loved ones who are not members of the church to attend this event.
It was a unique and refreshing experience where guests not only enjoyed trying out delicious burgers and bubble teas, it was for some a chance to make friends, learn about different cultures, and how to be creative with food. But most guests were introduced to the INC. Reporting from the London Bureau here in the United Kingdom, I'm Love Ann Season, and I'm 1 with 25.
Thank you, Love Ann.
Thank you, Love Ann. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr, also check out our boards on Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles and we're 1 with 25.